You know, I still can't believe the words that came out of my daughter-in-law's mouth. Don't talk to the old lady. She's just the cleaner. She sneered, dismissing me to the receptionist as if I were a piece of dirt under her shoe. It echoed in my ears, bouncing around my skull even now. Can you imagine the sheer audacity, the unadulterated disrespect? I'm telling you, it was a moment where my blood ran cold and then, just as quickly, it began to boil. I stood there, a cleaning bucket in one hand, a mop in the other, wearing the uniform I had painstakingly put on every day for the last 2 decades, and she just eradicated my existence, my personhood with a few flicked words. Was I wrong for what I did next? Tell me honestly, would you have done the same thing? Because what followed wasn't just a reaction. It was a carefully orchestrated symphony of sweet, sweet comeuppance. Let me take you back to the beginning, before my daughter-in-law, Sarah, decided I was invisible. My name is Eleanor, and I'm 62 years old. For the past 20 years, I've worked as a cleaner at one of the most prestigious law firms in the city, Sterling and Associates. It's not glamorous, I know, but it's honest work, and it put my son, Michael, through law school. Michael was my pride and joy, my only child, and from the moment he could walk, he had this incredible drive, this spark. He always wanted to be a lawyer, and I worked tirelessly, often taking extra shifts, to make sure he had every opportunity. He got into a fantastic law school, graduated with honors, and eventually, through sheer grit and talent, landed a junior associate position at Sterling and Associates. You can imagine how proud I was. I kept my job a secret from him, not because I was ashamed, but because I wanted him to make his own way, without any perceived favoritism or awkwardness. I just wanted to be Mom, the one who cheered him on from the sidelines. Life was good. Michael was thriving, moving up the ranks, and then he met Sarah. She was brilliant, beautiful, and also a lawyer, though from a different firm. They fell in love, or so I thought, and got married. Sarah was intense. From our first meeting, I got a strange vibe. She was always impeccably dressed, her nails perfectly manicured, and she had this air of superiority that made me a little uncomfortable. She came from a wealthy family, something she never failed to subtly, or not so subtly, weave into every conversation. I, on the other hand, was just Michael's mom, the one who sent him care packages of home-made cookies. She was polite enough, but there was always a distance, a barely concealed condescension in her eyes. I tried to bridge it, I really did. I invited them over for dinner, tried to make conversation about her work, her interests, but it always felt like pulling teeth. She'd answer in clipped sentences, then turn her attention back to Michael, or worse, her phone. I often felt like she was evaluating me, finding me wanting, and honestly, it stung. Michael, bless his heart, never seemed to notice. He was utterly smitten, convinced she was the perfect woman. He'd brush off my concerns with a gentle smile, saying, "Oh, Mom, that's just Sarah's way. She's focused." As Michael's career at Sterling and Associates blossomed, so did his financial success. He bought a beautiful house, drove a fancy car, and they lived a life of luxury that I could only dream of. I continued to work my cleaning job, content in my quiet routine. No one at the firm, other than a few of the longest, tenured staff who remembered me from before Michael joined, knew I was his mother. I kept my head down, did my work, and watched my son's star rise. He was on track to make partner, a dream come true for both of us. Then came the day Sarah joined Sterling and Associates. She was head-hunted, a big shot from a rival firm, and brought in as a senior associate, practically guaranteed a partnership in a few years. My heart sank a little when I heard the news. Not because I wasn't happy for Michael truly. I was thrilled they could work together, but because I knew my carefully constructed wall of anonymity was about to crumble. I braced myself for the awkwardness, for the inevitable moment when she would see me in my cleaning uniform and make the connection. I imagined a quiet, perhaps slightly embarrassed conversation, a request from Michael to keep it under wraps, or maybe even an offer to help me retire. I was prepared for anything, really, except for what actually happened. The first few weeks were uneventful. Sarah was busy, settling into her new office, meeting clients. I managed to avoid her. I'd clean her office late at night, after she'd left, or early in the morning before she arrived. I knew her schedule. I had learned the rhythm of the office over 2 decades. But one Tuesday, everything changed. I was cleaning the main reception area, wiping down the polished marble counter, when Sarah walked in, a stack of files under her arm, her designer handbag slung over her shoulder. She was talking animatedly on her phone, clearly having a triumphant conversation, a big smile on her face. She spotted the receptionist, a lovely young woman named Chloe, and ended her call, still radiating success. "Chloe, darling, could you print these out for me, and make sure Mr. Harrison gets the red folder first thing?" Sarah said, handing over the files. Chloe took them with a smile. "Of course, Ms. Davies, right away." As Chloe turned to her computer, she caught my eye. "Good morning, Eleanor. How are you today?" she asked, genuinely friendly. Chloe had always been kind, often offering me a cup of coffee or a friendly chat. She knew my story, knew I was Michael's mom, but she was discreet and always treated me with respect. I smiled back. "Morning, Chloe. Doing well, thank you. Just finishing up here." That's when Sarah turned. She hadn't noticed me before, blending into the background as I usually did. Her eyes, which had been sparkling with success moments before, narrowed into slits. Her gaze swept over my uniform, the bucket, the mop, and then finally landed on my face. Recognition dawned, slowly at first, then with a jolt of something akin to disgust. Her smile vanished, replaced by a sneer so sharp it could cut glass. "Chloe, what are you doing?" she snapped, her voice suddenly cold and laced with venom. Chloe looked up, startled. "I was just greeting Eleanor Ms. Davies, and that's when it happened. That's when my daughter-in-law, the woman my son loved, the woman I had tried so hard to welcome into our family, uttered those words that would forever change our relationship." She waved a dismissive hand in my direction, as if shooing away a fly. "Don't talk to the old lady. She's just the cleaner." Chloe's eyes widened, her face flushing with embarrassment, both for me and for Sarah's appalling behavior. I felt a cold dread settle in my stomach, quickly followed by a burning rage. It wasn't just the words, it was the tone, the absolute contempt in her voice, the way she dehumanized me, stripped me of my dignity right there in the lobby of the firm where I had poured my heart and soul for 20 years. For a moment, I stood frozen, the mop handle feeling impossibly heavy in my hand. My mind raced, flashing through all the sacrifices, all the late nights, all the dreams I'd held for Michael, dreams that now seemed to include this arrogant, heartless woman. I took a deep breath, trying to compose myself. I could feel Chloe's sympathetic gaze on me, and I appreciated her unspoken support. But I couldn't let this slide, not this time. This wasn't just about me. It was about respect, about recognizing the value of every person, regardless of their job title. And more than anything, it was about Sarah showing her true colors, revealing the ugly core beneath the polished exterior. I quietly finished wiping the counter, my movements precise, deliberate. Sarah, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me, turned her back, continuing to instruct Chloe in a sharp, demanding tone, as if I had already vanished. That's when a mischievous, almost devilish, thought sparked in my mind. A plan began to form, a slow, methodical unraveling of Sarah's carefully constructed world. This wouldn't be a shouted argument, a dramatic scene. No, this would be far more satisfying. This would be Eleanor's revenge, delivered with a mop and a smile. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have confronted her directly? Would you have told Michael? Or would you have, like me, decided that a little creative justice was in order? I decided that Sarah needed a lesson, a very public, very humiliating lesson in humility and respect. My first step was subtle. I started with her office. Sarah was meticulous, almost pathologically so. Every pen was aligned, every document stacked perfectly. Her office was a shrine to order. I, on the other hand, became an agent of very mild, almost imperceptible chaos. I would clean her office, yes, but I would move things, not drastically, not obviously, just enough to be unsettling. Her stapler, which always sat precisely in the middle of her desk blotter, would be moved an inch to the left. Her favorite pen, a fancy Montblanc, would mysteriously migrate from its holder to the corner of her keyboard. Her perfectly arranged files would be ever so slightly out of order, one folder subtly peeking out from the rest. The sugar packets for her coffee would be placed in the creamer dispenser, and the creamer in the sugar. Little things, annoying things, things that would make her pause, frown, and wonder if she was losing her mind. She'd rearrange them, of course, but the next day the subtle chaos would return. I could almost feel her frustration radiating through the walls. I imagined her, late at night, muttering to herself, reorganizing her desk, only for the ghost of Eleanor to return and shift things once more. It was a silent, psychological warfare, and it was glorious, but that wasn't enough. Not for just the cleaner. My next move involved a little misplacement of important documents. Nothing that would genuinely harm a case, of course. I wasn't malicious. But enough to cause a frantic search, a missed deadline, a moment of panic. I knew the filing system like the back of my hand. I knew where everything was supposed to be. So, if Sarah left a crucial memo on her desk, meant for a meeting that afternoon, I'd accidentally sweep it into a pile of recycling, only to discover it an hour after the meeting had ended, looking suitably apologetic. "Oh dear, Ms. Davies, this must have slipped down. So sorry," I'd say, my eyes twinkling innocently. The exasperation on her face was a sight to behold. She couldn't accuse me of sabotage, because it always looked like a genuine, albeit clumsy, mistake. And who would believe the old lady cleaner was capable of such cunning? The culmination of my plan, however, was far more public. I waited for the perfect storm, a day when the entire firm would be abuzz. It happened to be the day Michael was officially announced as a partner. There was a big celebration, a firm-wide luncheon in the main conference room, attended by all the senior partners, clients, and of course, Sarah. My son, my brilliant Michael, was finally achieving his dream. I was so incredibly proud of him, even as my heart ached for the way his wife treated me. I decided this was the day. I arrived at work early, as usual, and began my cleaning routine. I made sure to clean the conference room meticulously, polishing the table until it gleamed, arranging the chairs just so. I noted that Sarah had arrived early too, already in the conference room, hovering around Michael, beaming as he shook hands with the managing partner. Her expression was one of absolute triumph. She looked at me, sweeping the corner of the room, and I swear I saw a flicker of disdain in her eyes again. The luncheon began, the room filled with laughter, clinking glasses, and the murmur of congratulations. I, of course, was still the cleaner, so I was tasked with ensuring the catering staff had everything they needed, refilling water pitchers, and generally staying out of the way. I moved gracefully, almost invisibly, through the room, observing. Sarah was in her element, basking in Michael's success, introducing him to influential people, often with a possessive hand on his arm. She was wearing a stunning white silk dress, clearly expensive, and radiating an aura of untouchable elegance. And then it was time. I had meticulously prepared my weapon, a bucket of lukewarm, slightly soapy water. As I walked past the main table, where Sarah was holding court, regaling a group of senior partners with a story, I made sure my route was just a little too close. My gaze met hers for a split second, and I saw her eyes flick down to the bucket. A faint smirk played on her lips, a clear message of know your place. That was all the confirmation I needed. My foot, in my worn cleaning shoe, suddenly slipped on a completely dry patch of floor. I let out a small, exaggerated gasp, my arms flailing wildly. The bucket, almost as if it had a mind of its own, tilted, then cascaded its entire contents directly onto Sarah. It wasn't a gentle spill, it was a deluge. The lukewarm water, smelling faintly of lemon cleaner, drenched her from head to toe. Her expensive white silk dress, which moments before had been pristine, was now plastered to her body, completely see-through, revealing her very visible, very bright pink lingerie underneath. Her perfectly coiffed hair clung to her face, dripping wet. The delicate scent of lemon cleaner now enveloped her. The room went silent. Every single conversation stopped. All eyes, including Michael's, turned to Sarah, who stood there, stunned, humiliated, and utterly exposed. The silence lasted for what felt like an eternity, broken only by a few muffled gasps and a small, almost imperceptible titter from Chloe, who was standing by the reception desk. Then I started to apologize. Oh, I was a master of feigned remorse. Oh my goodness. Oh, Ms. Davies, I am so terribly sorry. My foot just slipped. I don't know how it happened. Are you all right? Oh, your beautiful dress. My voice was laced with what sounded like genuine distress, my hands fluttering about in exaggerated panic. I even wrung them, for good measure. Sarah, however, wasn't fooled. Her eyes, filled with a primal fury, locked onto mine. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. She was too shocked, too angry, too utterly mortified. Her face was a patchwork of red and white, her lips trembling. Michael rushed over, looking bewildered. "Sarah, what happened? Mom, are you okay?" And that's when I delivered the final, crushing blow. I turned to Michael, my face a picture of innocent concern. "Oh, Michael, darling, I'm so sorry. I just slipped. I didn't mean to drench your lovely wife. You know how clumsy your old mom can be." The word mom hung in the air, a bell tolling the end of Sarah's carefully constructed facade. The gasps from the senior partners were audible. Everyone in the room suddenly understood. The old lady cleaner, the one Sarah had so casually dismissed, was Michael Sterling's mother. The brilliant, rising star of the firm, the newly minted partner, was the son of Eleanor, the woman who had just soaked his wife in front of everyone. Sarah finally found her voice, a strangled, furious whisper. "You're your mother," she spluttered, looking from me to Michael, then back to me. The realization hitting her was almost tangible. The old lady cleaner she had humiliated was the woman who gave birth to the man she married, the woman who had worked for 20 years in this very building to put him through school. Michael looked utterly mortified, caught between his drenched, furious wife and his seemingly clumsy, apologetic mother. He quickly led a sputtering, shivering Sarah out of the conference room, wrapping his jacket around her. The luncheon, needless to say, was effectively over. The aftermath was exactly as I had hoped, and then some. Michael confronted me later that day, his face a mixture of anger, embarrassment, and a hint of understanding. He wasn't yelling, but his voice was tight. "Mom, why didn't you tell me, and why did you do that to Sarah?" I looked him dead in the eye, no longer feigning clumsiness. "Because, Michael, your wife doesn't believe that people like me deserve respect. She doesn't believe that the woman who cleaned this office for 2 decades, the woman who raised you and put you through law school, deserves to be spoken to as a human being. She called me just the cleaner, a disposable old lady, and I decided she needed to learn a lesson." I told him about her comments, about the constant condescension, about the way she treated me. Michael listened, his face falling as the reality of Sarah's behavior settled in. He knew his wife had a sharp tongue, but he'd always excused it as her intensity. This was different. This was outright cruelty. He eventually apologized to me, truly apologized, for not seeing it sooner. As for Sarah, she was absolutely furious. She tried to demand my firing, but the managing partner, a wise old man who had seen many things in his time, simply shook his head. He knew the unwritten rules of the firm, the loyalty that was owed to long-time employees, especially those who had sacrificed so much. And frankly, a few senior partners had found Sarah's snobbery grating for a while. The incident, though undeniably messy, had a strange way of clearing the air. It put Sarah in her place. Sarah never truly forgave me, but she learned. Oh, she learned. She stopped dismissing people. She was still Sarah, sharp and ambitious, but the public humiliation had chipped away at her arrogance. She started greeting the cleaning staff, albeit stiffly, and she never, ever again called me just the cleaner. Our relationship, or lack thereof, remained strained, but there was a grudging respect, or at least a healthy fear, in her eyes whenever she saw me. Michael, on the other hand, changed. He saw his wife through new eyes, and he saw me, his mother, with a renewed appreciation. He insisted I retire, and this time I accepted. He set me up comfortably, ensuring I wouldn't have to work another day in my life. He often came to visit, and our conversations were deeper, more honest. He truly understood the sacrifices I had made, and he stood by me. That, for me, was the real victory. So, here I am, retired, comfortable, and reflecting on it all. It was a messy, dramatic incident, but sometimes a little mess is exactly what's needed to clean things up. The moral of the story, I suppose, is that you should never underestimate anyone, especially not the old lady cleaner. Everyone deserves respect, regardless of their position in life. And sometimes you have to create a little splash to make people see that. If you were on my side, like this video. Subscribe for more stories like this, where the underdog gets their moment. And please, share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. I'll see you all in the next story.